I do want to welcome you guys. Andy, a very, very familiar face for our industry. Managing editor, top man at the KBBI Review. How about that?
Yeah, well, I'll take that.
Good, you can have that one, absolutely. And Jane, working with the BMA, and our good friends Tom and Co at the BMA. And we're here essentially just to basically have a conversation around some of the research.
We have some good news in this one, Damian.
Yeah, no, there will be some good news.
Pretty miserable so far.
I'll tell you what the good news is lunch after this.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's good news. Lots of insight in terms of research, and I think that's really good. We're starting to see other media outlets in particular, but also other associations really drawing in on the conversation of installation and installers. So I think that's absolutely testament to I guess, all the great work that BiKBBI does in terms of shouting about installers and making sure that's part of the industry's agenda, but also for you guys for embracing that as well, because, you know, clearly this is a subject that we do need to talk about because it's very important. I do want to talk about some statistics that have come out from your research, actually. And Jane, if I don't mind starting with you and the BMA. And this was great news, by the way, to me. Absolutely fantastic news. But it was basically talking about the influence, essentially, of the bathroom installer on the consumer's buying, I guess their buying experience, and what essentially drives them to make the decisions they do, specifically around products. So, as the screen suggests, 40% of consumers in your piece of research suggested that the installer played a very significant part in that process. What can you tell us about that?
Okay, well, this was a piece of research that we did back in 2022, and it was consumer research, and we spoke to 512 UK homeowners who'd purchased a complete bathroom since March 2020, because we actually wanted to understand the impact of COVID on the pandemic on purchase patterns for bathrooms, and we could benchmark this against previous research that had gone back to 2013, actually. So we surveyed people in May 2022. And this stat came right at the end. And I'm always really pleased when we get something like this, because a lot of research, you can go through it and just think, yeah, so what? Whereas this was a great one right at the end. And basically, we just said, last question, who had the biggest impact on the products that you bought for your bathroom? And there it was, bang, 40% the installer. So we thought, well, we'll look into this more and just see where does the installer have influence throughout the purchase process. So we went back and looked at the research again, and we'd got 16% of homeowners thought that advice from the bathroom fitter was the most useful research method. So that's right at the very beginning when they're thinking about their bathroom. 28% of homeowners had their bathroom planned by their bathroom fitter. 16% of homeowners relied on their bathroom fitter to supply all the products for their new bathroom. 25% of homeowners chose a retailer because it was recommended to them by the bathroom fitter. And then the one at the end, which was the 40%, so they had the biggest impact on the choice of products. But if we need to put that in a little bit of context, because I like a bit of context around the stats, then if you think about the role of the installer, they are the last person that the homeowner sees. They're the ones that bring all the products in, they fit it all, they're in your home talking to you, and they hand over this bathroom. And that's quite a dangerous place for the installer to be, because not only are they the biggest influence, they can also be the person that gets blamed for everything. So just a little word of caution that it's not always the best place for the installer to be, the last person in the door.
No, absolutely. And I think there are, obviously, from our perspective, there's some huge positives, from our viewpoint in terms of the installer playing that critical part in the buying journey. But I guess, as you say, that can be really quite destructive, can't it? Because if we're not connected and engaged with that installer population, making them aware of the products and services that we as individual brands or as industry creates, and that could be from a sustainability, it could be from a tech perspective, then all of that kind of is undone when the installer goes in and says, no, you don't want one of those flashy new taps. Well, actually, what you want is my tried and tested one.
I think it depends, obviously, where they've sourced the products from in the first place. And it'd be interesting to break that number down in the future, I think, because obviously if you're buying from a premium independent retailer, for example, you would assume that the installer's influence was much less, whereas if they were ordering it online, the installer's influence would be massive. Yeah. What was interesting about these numbers for me, though, was how far up the purchasing chain that influence was. It wasn't just by the time they got in there with the tools. It was much earlier in the conversation, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we did break it down, like you say, to see what route did the consumer go through to get those products, and it still came back to quite a high percentage that the installer. But if they did buy through a premium retailer, then the retailer had a lot of influence as well. So at every stage, there are different influences.
It's one of those things, isn't it? You can dispel hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of marketing with one sharp intake of breath from an installer, can't you?
Yeah.
You got it.
One fitter going, don't want to mate.
Yeah.
No,
Suddenly it's all out the window.
and that's the importance of manufacturers in particular connecting with installers and ensuring that, I guess, they're informed as to the positive changes and developments that have been made in products.
It's interesting, in the panel earlier on, actually, I've completely forgotten his name, the installer who was on the panel.
Who are we talking about? Elliot, or are we talking about...
No, his boss.
His boss, yeah. There he is over there, Paul. Hi, Paul.
Oh, sorry, Paul, I keep forgetting it. But they asked a question about what he's looking for from products, and his quite understandably was uniformity, which of course is the last thing people that make products want.
Yeah.
They don't want their products to be the same as everybody else's. They don't want uniformity. They want USPs and points of difference.
Yeah.
But of course, the fitters want you to just plug everything in exactly the same way.
Yeah,
and that balance is really, really important.
I thought Elliot's answer was much better, though, to be fair. What attracts you to this industry? Money.
Yeah.
There you go.
If I'm honest, it's attracted me to this industry
They say
now.
at the mouth of babes, is that what they say anyway?
If I wasn't a danger to myself and others with tools, I'd be switching.
Absolutely. Okay. On to you, this next one. Well, I must admit, when you published it, made me fall off my seat. I was incredibly surprised by this particular piece of research, and as the slide will suggest, Andy and the team at kbbreview did some research with some independent retailers. And only 8% of those retailers that were part of that research stated that finding good fitters was their number one concern, which, if we go back just 1 year when you did that first piece of research, remind me, 80%?
Yeah, about 82%, I think it was.
82%.
We did it a couple of years ago.
Okay. Yeah. So what's that all about then, Andy?
I think it's probably all sorted, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what you're going on about.
Well done, everyone. Good job. Thank you.
Look, I think
lunch.
that number jumped out at me as well when it came out, because obviously it's such a massive difference, right? But what that really shows is how it's the sort of fickle nature of challenges, right? So has the challenge gone away? No, of course it hasn't. Don't be daft. But what has gone away is the level of demand that we saw a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so when finding good fitters was just the principal thing of trying to meet the demand that was there. Yeah. Plus, there's lots of other more challenging things than this now in terms of the economy and footfall and inquiries and all that. So we did this research of 502 retailers, because the 2 is very important. And half of them said their footfall and inquiries were down. I think about 25% said they hadn't moved.
Yeah.
So the challenge of overwhelming demand has gone away.
Yeah.
And therefore the challenge of finding good fitters has gone away. But it's funny that there's lots of bits of the research that kind of totally contradict with each other, which is why it makes such an interesting bit of conversation, because it always depends what you ask them, right? So you say, is finding good fitters a big challenge of yours at the moment? No, not really. But, and I have the numbers, I'm not looking at TikTok, I'm looking at my notes. 74% of retailers still say that there aren't enough skilled installers and fitters.
Doesn't make sense, does it?
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is when you talk anecdotally to retailers about this kind of thing, they're doing a lot. So the problem's gone away in the sense that the urgent demand has gone away.
Yeah.
However, what I am seeing much more is there's much more conversations, not about finding good fitters or apprenticeships, it's about how do you keep the ones you've got.
Yeah. That's a very interesting question.
And that comes down to money. And there's that slow sort of momentum around employing your own fitters and what an important part of your USPs as an independent retailer that is. And in fact, we asked what they think sets them apart from their competitors, and recommendation was number one, you'd expect it to be.
Yeah.
But having your own installation team came out above the design of your showroom, which I was really surprised by. So it's becoming a much more of an essential part of your business to have an installation team. The difficulty is persuading them to come off the self-employed when they could be pulling 90, 100 grand in, and put them on PAYE, and persuading them to have sick pay and holiday pay, and we'll sort your van and your tools and your insurance out.
Yeah.
So it's as much about keeping the ones you've got, probably more than finding new ones, which it's just kicking a can down the road.
Yeah, because it is, potentially a very leaky bucket. Yeah, we could spend a lot of time and effort bringing new people in, but absolutely retaining the experience more than anything is absolutely critical to what we do. There were some interesting bits there from Abdul's piece of research. And the bit that frightens me the most, and I'm frightened for two things really. I think number one, I think the research that you published there and undertook there is giving people a little bit of a false, a bit of a false comfort blanket that everything is okay, because there will be some people out there that do think it is. But much like Brexit and the demand caused by the coronavirus, actually, the problem was always there. It was just, as I've said before, it was like a plaster that's kind of been ripped off an old problem. And I feel that perhaps the plaster's starting to be patched back on.
I remember you saying right in the height of it, don't forget what this feels like. Don't forget how this feels to be that desperate.
People forget though, don't they, right?
Of course they do.
People do forget, and that is a big sort of concern of ours. And in terms of the economic outlook and where we might be as a result of what's going on in the world today and the effect that can have on the economy, I think that's really, really important, because our ability to be able to bounce back from any of that, things that we can't really influence, for me, is quite worrying. The installer plays a really big, important role. The other bit up there again, and the statistics have actually sadly got worse, which is on the subject of installers and what they may be doing moving forward. Are installers happy with what they've got? And I think if we go back to Connie's piece, around 50% of her workforce are due to, I was going to say expire then, but they're not due to expire. Back to the COVID stats. No, they're not. They're about to retire or go do something else. But that's a huge number. But if you then look at some of the statistics from the research that we created, and hopefully it's up on the next slide, but 66% of installers would consider leaving the KBB sector for another industry. Now that's worrying already. We've got half of our workforce potentially walking out the door to go play golf with Paul, because it sounded like you play a lot of golf, by the way. Popping back to site when there's a problem. I've heard it all before, Paul. But then you've got 66% of that group that potentially want to take their skills elsewhere. And when you look at what Abdul's produced up there, or some of the research that comes from that, the renewable energy sector for me is a real competitive threat to us. And I know, I was talking about me, banging the environmental drum a minute ago and being very pro-environment, and I am. But I think for us as an industry, that could cause as many problems to us as an ageing workforce and a depleting set of professional installers.
It's really strange though, isn't it? Because I would understand that if you could earn a lot more money doing that than you can do this. But the amount of money you can earn fitting kitchens and bathrooms is massive, because there's such a shortage of good guys. So I find it quite it's an easy temptation to go in, because lots of people are getting solar panels fitted on their house. But actually, it's not like the shortage of work.
But is it an easier sector to work in? Is it because it's difficult to fit a kitchen and a bathroom?
I think it's a really good question. I think complexity is definitely one of the things that have flagged in our research, is that we do, and as I alluded to in the opening speech there, we do operate in a very complex market. It isn't straightforward. This isn't, with all due respect, and I'm sure the solar panel engineers in the room will throw things at me, but it isn't as straightforward as that. There are a lot of factors to consider when you're fitting kitchens, bedrooms and bathrooms. And from a legislative point of view, there is also. I think the other thing to consider is how government are promoting and supporting businesses to embrace things like renewable energies and incentivising consumers to invest in renewable energies will all have a factor on whether an installer actually wants to continue or not.
Can I be really controversial?
Do it.
The kitchen, bedroom and bathroom industry has an incredible ability to totally get in its own way. Right? It just does.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is very simple, and lots of people have heard me be bored by this before. There's no such thing as a kitchen, bedroom and bathroom industry. Yeah. There's a appliances industry, there's a worktops industry, there's an installation industry, there's lots of industries all kind of bolted together in this kind of life raft floating around. And so there's no sort of collective decision making goes on at all. So we need to stop talking about the KBB industry, because there's no such thing.
Yeah.
But it has a way of getting in its own way, because my frustration with the installation side of things, and I'm just an observer of it, please don't ever ask me to install anything, for the love of God. But it is that there's a fantastic endpoint here. You can earn an awful lot of money doing that. I mean, you've heard it yourself. What better argument is that? You can earn a lot of money doing this.
Yeah.
So why does the industry make it so flipping complicated?
Yeah.
It just shouldn't be this difficult, should it?
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's a good note to end this panel discussion, because it is a fairly decent question that we could ask each other over some ham sandwiches for lunch. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate your time today.